Welcome to another edition of Turn 6 Garage, and today I'm driving a 2022 Toyota Corolla Hybrid Ascent Sport Hatch. Now, the petrol-driven Corolla, the non-hybrid, has a 2-litre inline 4-cylinder engine. This has a 1.8-litre inline 4-cylinder engine and an electric motor, with a combined power of 90 kilowatts, which may not sound like a lot, but this thing's actually quite zippy. It's mated to a CVT transmission, as of course it would be, and again, it's not too offensive, and performance of this car, especially mid-range pulling power, is really good. It's actually quite zippy for what you would think would be quite a slow car. So in terms of performance, it actually feels like it's got more mid-range torque than the 2-litre inline 4-cylinder engine, although I guess the electric motor gives it that extra boost. One thing that is different about this car is the standard petrol-driven car turns really well. This turns well, but not as well. It's heavier over the front wheels, and you can really feel it over a bump and into the corner. It wants to understeer a lot more than its normal petrol-driven stablemate. It drives well, the ride's pretty good. It's not a bad compromise for the extra weight of the hybrid engine, but still you do feel that there is definitely a compromise there in the handling department. But I'm currently driving on electric power, doing 60 kilometers an hour, and I'm driving on electric power, all silent, all quiet. Yeah, it's not too bad. Now the petrol engine comes in. One thing I don't like so much about this is when the hybrid engine's in, the rev counter stays at 0, which is quite disconcerting. You think that things aren't actually running. Now, okay, people who have electric cars don't normally have a rev counter. For someone like me who's used to driving manuals, having a rev counter that says 0 is not a very good thing. In terms of the interior, it's pretty standard issue Corolla. As I said in the video of the petrol car, I actually like this interior quite a lot. It's relatively comfortable. It feels reasonably well put together. I like the design. Rear seats and the boot, not so much. They're still tight in the rear. Like 6 foot size 14 me doesn't fit behind 6 foot size 14 me when I'm driving. And the rear seats are only really meant for children or people who are, I would say, 5'2" or 3" at best. I have a soft spot for this car, as I mentioned in the other video. This generation of Corolla really does look good. They got the styling right on this car, because it doesn't look boring. It actually looks interesting. It's got all the nice swoopy lines and swoopy curves. It's the sort of thing that you wouldn't expect Toyota to have made 20 years ago. It's actually quite a nice car to behold. It's not the sort of piece of paper style of appearance, bland looking. This actually does have lots of interesting styling cues, styling touches, all the things that really make this car relatively interesting and actually quite nice to have in your driveway. Should you have this car in your driveway? Performs well, rides okay, handles okay. Okay, interior space is not exactly perfect in the rear and the boot, but styling's pretty good. Well, that's depending on what you do. If you order one of these cars, it's $32,000, which makes reasonable sense for what it is. A little bit on the exy side. I probably would have thought this thing's worth high 20s new. However, this thing does have quite a serious lead time. And I mean, you're probably looking at 12 months at the very minimum. Might have changed between the time of this being filmed and the time you watch this, but I'm not entirely sure it will. It probably will right itself throughout late 23, early 24 when there's more chips, but I still think you're going to be waiting a while for this thing. You could buy it earlier and pay $42,000 for it. Yeah. A 10 grand premium, a third of the list price of the car added on to the purchase price. Come on. And the scary thing is, The second-hand ones are off the scale. A 2020 car with 25,000 Ks is 36 grand. A 2017 previous generation Corolla Hybrid with 100,000 Ks is 28. Yeah, people are paying through the nose for these cars. Now, why would this be the case? Well, it's an Uber. It's a greenie car. It's a hybrid. It's a Corolla. Add all those things together and you have a demand that would easily outstrip the supply, especially when supply is constrained. These were popular and their resale value is pretty much bomb-proof. If you do buy it close to $32,500 that this is quoted to be in the specification here, plus minus further markups, say you get it for 35, even if there is a price rise, it's still going to hold its value though. The fact that the used cars are worth what they're worth means that these things have a lot of money in them in terms of value retention. It is a hybrid, it's a Corolla, it's a Toyota, it's reliable, it's fuel efficient, it's green, and it's relatively stylish and it's relatively anonymous all at the same time. So that means if you do buy one of these things, it's quite a wise investment. After 5 years of owning this car, you're going to get a lot of your money back. Even when supply does sort itself out, I don't see a 5-year-old Corolla Hybrid being worth less than low 20s. It's going to retain, I would say, close to 2/3 of its value, especially if you don't do a lot of Ks. If you do a lot of Ks, it's still going to retain more than half. You're still going to be selling it for about 20 grand in 5 years. These things are desirable secondhand. People want Corolla Hybrids a bit too much now because the market was willing to pay for it 12 months ago, which it may not be doing so much now. But even if you get one at list price, 32 grand, and you only drive 50,000 Ks a year in 5 years and you sell it, you get most of that money back. If you do 100 and something thousand Ks, so like 120, 130, you're still going to get back at least in the low 20s. So in all fairness, these things will hold their value. People will pay money for Corolla Hybrids, so it does make sense to buy it as an investment if you want a commuter car. Now, the other thing is electric cars will be coming on. People with buying electric cars as company cars and the full subsidy of the electric car, which means the net cost is halved for anything under $80,000. Now, that could be something that may deflate the resale of the hybrid Corolla, but I sincerely doubt it. And the reason being is plenty of people in my shoes who an electric car at this point doesn't work. The range I've got to travel is too far for that car, and what I'll be doing with it is just way too far for that car. I have drives that I have to do that car could never do, not at this point. And that is real world, not it says it does. I've driven one, I've driven and looked at the miles on others and spoken to a lot of owners of them, and I'm saying to you now that the mileage listed isn't exactly what you will get. So with that in mind, given the mileages I've got to travel, given the places I've got to go, hybrid would make the most sense if I wanted a green car. Now, I use the term green very loosely because this is battery powered. This battery has a life. So you think this might be a green car, this battery does have a life. Normally in the Priuses, you're discussing anywhere between 10 and 14 years on the original battery. Some will go further, some will go less, just an average. Now, these tend to be quite good in terms of reliability, but you do have to replace the battery, and that can be around 2 grand a pop. Doesn't really hurt their resale value as much because there's plenty of Toyota batteries out there, and the battery can still be used. So, you have to also consider when you buy this car, the other environmental effect. If you're going to run this for more than a decade, you're going to need to go through another battery. So, all things considered, you'd have to do a lot of miles to make this a very green purchase, because there's a lot more energy going into making the car. Something that people don't like talking about, but I have to mention it. An electric car as well, watch this space. They think they're green, but I'm not sure if that's really going to be the case moving forward. We don't have enough information on these cars to know how they'll go. Whereas the hybrids, we have a much stronger base of what they can do because there's a lot more of them and they've been around for the last 25 years. So, if you have a reasonably long commute and you want a reliable daily driver that's got really solid resale value, then you get a hybrid Corolla. As long as you can get one for a reasonable price, new,